So I said, well, you shouldn't have done that anyway. But anyway, listen to this one.
Mm.
The English government, in my opinion, doesn't want to stop the migrants from crossing the channel in the small boats. The Rwanda deal is on the last legs, as we know, if we listen to the news in the UK. Rwanda Air, who was supposed to be transporting the people to Rwanda, have pulled out its services, saying that they don't want to know anymore. And the Rwandan government said from the beginning that they wouldn't do it if it was deemed illegal by the courts. You know, they didn't want to do anything illegal, and so, you know, it looks like it's you know, it's going to die a death.
Mm.
And I say the English government, you know, when I say the English government doesn't want this, I'm not saying James Cleverly. I'm sure he does want this. But I say, even though James Cleverly does want this, he does play a part in the British government, and you'll understand what I'm saying in a short moment. Sunak knows that Rwanda is so far off the table. That's why they're starting to bring in the Ivory Coast, Costa Rica, as some alternatives. I don't mind going to the Ivory Coast or Costa Rica. You know, spend a holiday there.
Yeah.
And they're citing these places as an alternative to Rwanda. And so the game's going to begin from the start again. You know, they're going to have to start getting in contact with the governments of Costa Rica. And so, you know, it's going to drag on and on and on, as these things do, costing money, of course. Let me tell you about the English Supreme Court, because it's all linked in together, is this?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The English Supreme Court was implemented in 2009, in the time of when Tony Blair was the Prime Minister, 2009. Yeah. He persuaded the Queen at that time to sign a change of the Constitution to allow the Supreme Court to exist. Basically, it takes the place of the High Court, which traditionally, if you had to appeal the decisions made in the lower court, should go to the High Court, and the High Court would give the final decision. But the Supreme Court has taken over that role. You know, although both of them are still active, the High Court and the Supreme Court. All of these things are different, and they're all going to tie in together at the end. So, just to show you my thinking, right?
Yeah.
Liz Truss, our friend Liz Truss, she, in an interview promoting her book, a new book, explained that the Prime Minister doesn't make decisions for the direction or the policy of the country. Rather, a cabal in the civil service does this. The role of the Prime Minister and his ministers is just to justify to the public the decision made by the shadow government. When I say the shadow government, I don't mean, in this context, I don't mean the opposition, the party of the opposition.
Yeah.
Because the Labour Party will have their shadow chancellor, they have their shadow, you know. But this is the deep shadow government in this context, as the Americans would call it, a deep state. You know, the deep state. We can see it more clearly in the US.
Yeah.
With what's going on in the US recently, you know, we can see more clearly how the deep state is working rather than the actual politicians. They're different. The US deep state and the British shadow government are distinct. However, they do work hand in hand. When we're talking about Five Eyes, and you know, some time ago, Five Eyes is that the espionage cabal. You know, the five countries that all club together to pass the information from one to the other. You know. Truss said that Mark Carney did not control the Bank of England in his tenure, but followed orders, which is probably what put the UK in the shit economically.
Yeah.
Because, he was just following orders. What he thought is a lot different than what he did.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that. Truss showed a disdain by saying that when she was Prime Minister, she wasn't allowed to make policy, being overruled by the civil service. The civil service would say, Prime Minister, you can't do that. Have you thought of doing it like this? Basically, it's the civil service that was changing the policy, if you like. In this podcast, I mentioned about the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Why did I mention the Supreme Court? Who elects the judges to the Supreme Court in the UK? You would have thought it would be like in the US, where they go to the House of Commons, the people wanting to enter into the Supreme Court. They go to the House of Commons, they go to the House of Lords, get interviewed by the committees.
Yeah.
Before being approved. But no. Who promotes and contracts the new judges for the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court does. So if you are rubbing shoulders with the higher ups at the Supreme Court, or they're your friends or family of friends, or the good chance that you are the lucky one that we're chosen for that top job, paying an awful lot of money. And if you share their political views, which as the Supreme Court was implemented by Tony Blair, the seed was sown for a more leftist view of the law than the law, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, I mentioned about the illegal immigrants and coming across by boat. That the government doesn't want to resolve the problem, and I say this because I read a very small story. I'm surprised it hasn't blown up in the UK, but a French captain of a French naval ship was accompanying a small boat full of migrants out from port off the French coast. And he said the quiet part out loud when he was challenged by a captain of another ship that had to give way. This other ship had to remain in port until this French naval ship and this small boat left the port.
Yeah.
And he was challenged, saying, you should be letting us go. You're holding us up because of that. And the captain of the French naval ship said, we have a contract with the UK government to do this. So the French Navy has a contract with the British government to accompany the small boats until they reach the dividing line, until they reach the British waters. And then it's up to the Royal National Lifeboat Association to pick them up. So we can see that there's a public side of the government that we're allowed to see.
Yeah.
The James Cleverleys, we'll get this sorted out. The Rishi Sunaks, the economy is great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the shadow government goes on in the background and continues to work. Now, it sounds very, what's the word I'm looking for? Conspiracy theorist, that little piece.
Yeah.
However, when all the evidence is screaming at you from all sides, it's very difficult to ignore. Yeah. And when people in the UK, I see on Facebook and other places where people are arguing about their who they're going to vote in the next election.
Yeah.
And what happens? It doesn't matter who you vote for. It's the shadow government that decides what you're going to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll take over and I'll say I'm not surprised by anything you've told me. Again, I've often referred to it from the 1980s, the TV series Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister.
But at that time, it was just a comedy.
Yeah.
At that time, it didn't affect anybody because nobody knew it was just a comedy.
Well, yeah, Margaret Thatcher used to watch it apparently, and I wouldn't say laughed, probably thought it was more of a documentary. Yeah, it's a, how can I put it? Yeah, he had one of a British democracy. Yeah, where the civil service has been trying over many, many years to actually take the voter and the politicians out of the business, as it were. Do we really know our politicians? No. When I say that, we hear what they say, as you quite rightly said. The honest politicians seem to get shut down or removed or criticised. It's interesting you talk about stopping the boats, because Lee Anderson was on one of the channels this week, or maybe two, saying that he could have stopped the boats himself. Quite, you know, maybe he's making a bid for the leadership. I don't know. It's a very, very murky world, and we know about this. We've always, you know, whatever you've told me isn't a shock. The sub-agendas, the other agendas. Yeah, the civil service has been known for years to do its own thing. This is why when Patel, I mean, let's just face it, if we're going to talk about DEI box ticking, we've had Solomon, Patel in power, women of alternative ethnicity to white.
Well, you know, like I said with Cleverly, you know, what's happening about the boat people is not necessarily what he wants to happen.
No.
What he says is going to happen, the part that he tells the public is one thing. You know, when he came out of number 10 Downing Street, when he was selected to be the secretary of what he is, he said, and it was almost robotic what he said.
Yeah, of course.
You know, we will sort this problem out, and I will do this and do that. Wow. And it was very robotic of what he said. He had to give some discourse to the public, to justify his very hiring, I suppose.
Well, yeah, if he hadn't have done that, he'd have been history already.
And Priti Patel was exactly the same thing. Yeah, she was very aggressive to the public. But if the deep state don't allow her, if the shadow government doesn't allow her, it becomes very difficult.
Well, this is it. And I said in previous podcasts, it doesn't matter who we elect in the UK, I'm not going to speak in here, unless we can deal with what's now known as the blob, effectively, we can elect a certain other politician who's quite popular. He's not a politician, is he? He's a TV presenter, but who happened to go in the jungle for a time. Even if you elect him as the leader, what would happen? He would probably be trying and hit up against it. I suspect that they'll find a way to remove him. I do actually honestly believe that we had another Prime Minister quite recently who was kicked out for eating a bit of cake, quite frankly, which most of us thought was ridiculous because he didn't toe the line entirely. He towed the line to a point, but yeah, there's things coming out now that's probably released by him that he didn't toe the line entirely. It is frightening what's going on. Anyone that it doesn't play the right game or the right rules is going to be got rid of. That's going to start at the top. It's going to go right through society. We're seeing it a little bit more closer to home, and I'm not saying anything else than that. We're seeing it a little bit more closer to home. That if
a lot of the time, that's the beauty of these podcasts that we do, because we are on the outside looking in.
Yeah,
you know, we are not part of the society that involves all this crap that's going on. You know, we can see clearly. We can see clearly what's going on. Unfortunately, the people within the society can't see what's going on. They can't see what's going on behind the back. But I can see what's going on behind their back because I'm a long way away and I can see.
Well, yeah. When you're in the eye of the storm, you don't see what else is happening. And well, I do think there's people in. I mean, there's two levels to it. People sometimes think it and think, well, that's just so ridiculous. No way would people be doing that. And yeah, there is an age above us. I come from an age. Well, yeah, you're an honorary Gen Xer. When you were born, I'm a Gen Xer. We are the cynical, sarcastic ones. You can't tell me. You can't tell me what to think. Yeah, older boomers do tend to be old establishment. They'll work it out. They'll figure it out. It'll all change again. There is a push globally with everything that's going on. Well, when I say globally, I think you know what I mean. In certain countries, mainly English speaking, to start pushing an agenda. We all know that true freedom doesn't really exist. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, because we all got our own filters, and we should all have our filters. We know it's acceptable. Yeah. Okay, there could be a very good, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. There could be a very good reason why the population of the UK needs some bolstering, because the overall birth rate is dropping for whatever reasons, and we've discussed this before. Yet there's another demographic who are actually increasing their birth rate, who, for various reasons, might be a little bit more compliant with instructions. Yeah. No ruling junta, ruling administration wants a free-thinking society or people beneath it. They want people who are compliant. I'm always remembered from the whole.
I think that's in the Western world. That's what's starting to happen. Thank goodness. This is what makes this world so interesting, because it's this world. It's this year.
Yeah.
That makes this world interesting, because it's this year when half the population of the planet are able to vote on who they want to rule them over the next 4 years, and it's very, very rare for this to happen this year.
Well,
very rare for this to happen.
But again, unless the people that do get voted in are accepted and can actually do something about anything, it's an academic exercise. It's literally a box ticking exercise. Of course. And this is what frustrates me. I mean, okay, you can accuse us of being conspirators or talking conspiracy. I'm not going to go down that route. Yeah, we all know that probably less than 25% of anything a manifesto says actually gets implemented in good times. Yeah, there's reasons for that. Yeah, I can give you a list of things I would envision happening or would like to happen. Yeah, I could give you a roadmap how I intend to do it, unless everybody is compliant with it. And it's just like, yeah, I've done project management. It's exactly like this. These are the tasks we have to achieve to get the end project, the end result. And that's how I see it. I mean, this is where certain other politicians who talk business speak to me. I understand what they're trying to say. I think I know who you're talking about here. You know, they're not politicians, they're chief executives, or they're people who are more used to business. Yeah, this is where we got to get to. How do we get here? It doesn't always fit with other people's agenda or personal needs or requirements, with their status and everything else. As you've often said, politics is a dirty game. Well, it's not a dirty game now. It's
a game of compliance.
That's it. Yeah.
It's a game of compliance.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what happens now, let's give an example. The people of a country, they elect a administration It's not one person we elect. We elect administration. Argentina is a good example of this, really. You know, it's one figurehead, but he couldn't do what he's managing to do there without a team around him who were with him. Now, he seems to have pretty much the people's support, and he was up front, honestly. This is going to be a hard time at first, but we'll reap the benefits later. Okay, we'll see what happens. But the people have spoken. Okay, in the UK, or other places, if we actually elect someone, they can give us all this. How are they going to achieve it? Did we ever hear that?
No, and what gets me as well is change. We need change. We need change. Yes, to what? To what exactly?
Yeah.
You know, they don't. The Keir Starmers of this world have said we can be better, but it doesn't say how. You know, we need change, but it doesn't say how.
Well, even
you know,
Boris was guilty of that. Build back better. Build back to what?
You know when?
Yeah.
You know when Tony Blair was is the last throw.